Brilliant. So thank you so much for joining us this morning. Welcome to our Homes for Healthy Ageing programme overview and SME guidance for our open call. My name is Natalie Record. I'm Housing Innovation Lead here at the Catapult, leading on this Homes for Healthy Ageing programme. And my colleague Ryan Goodman is joining us, who's our Living Labs Manager, and he'll be taking you through the technical side of the open call. Brilliant. So next slide, please, Leanne. So our Homes for Healthy Ageing programme, next, brilliant, thank you. Our Homes for Healthy Ageing programme is to contribute towards the UK government's goal to support older people to live at home healthily for 5+ years longer. As part of the programme, we will create 5 test beds across the UK with location partners and local consortiums. We'll test and demonstrate innovative approaches and tools, including UK-based and international technologies, and we'll focus efforts on delivering replicable, impactful solutions to move forward the UK's healthy ageing agenda. Next slide, please. So a bit of programme background to see how we got to this stage today. And we started looking into the future of housing in 2019, where we convened a lot of different key stakeholders across the built environment industry, as well as central government stakeholders, local authorities, different SMEs, and we worked together to understand what was the future of housing, which areas could the Catapult play a role in helping to convene and to scale technologies. And 3 areas were identified, so healthy ageing, retrofit and innovative finance. And this here is the Homes for Healthy Ageing programme that's come out of the healthy ageing arm of that strategy. 2020, you may have seen on our website, we have a Homes for Healthy Ageing report, which we can send a link to as well. And that set out some of the key opportunities. And we developed this internally with look at the feasibility, talking to lots of different stakeholders and users, people in their homes as well, to understand what the role of technology could be to support people to live independently in their homes and their places for longer. And as such, we've developed this programme, which we've been developing over this last year, from 2021, and we launched officially in June of this year. In January, between January and April, there are some key sort of gaps in our sort of research base, and so we procured 4 reports, which we will be publishing over the next few months to look at some of the challenges, including working with the Helen Hamlin Centre for Design, looking at meeting the ageing population. We work with pro-social plays at the University of Liverpool and looking at the relationship between place and healthy ageing. We work with Project Fire on looking at responsible data for Homes for Healthy Ageing, and we also work with the BRE on building fabric challenges. Next slide, please. Great, thank you. So the UK healthy ageing ecosystem, our team have been mapping out the different sort of products and services that already exist across the ecosystem, and it's clear that there are lots of different products and services already out there, and many different people operating in different spaces that with products and services that relate to older people. That you've got the health tech sector, you've got housing and built environment, standards, regulation, innovation and research, finance and investment, work and education, social life and recreation and care. And when we've been looking at this, we really understand that the market is still very fragmented though, and it's missing horizontal collaboration to provide attractive solutions that answer people's individual needs and desires, preventative approaches and compelling investment cases to deploy solutions at larger scales. So this led us to look at what role could the Catapult play in operating across this ecosystem as a neutral convener, and where could we help to start to test these technologies, to build those business cases, and to then eventually hopefully scale the technologies in people's homes. Next slide, please. So this is what we've ended up with, an initial idea of like defining the role for Connected Places Catapult within this ecosystem. So we will be sharing human-centered evidence and insights throughout our programme. We'll be testing and demonstrating innovative approaches throughout the programme. We'll be building an ecosystem of scalable solutions. We'll be convening the market. We'll be delivering replicable and scalable models, creating a model for further investment and rollout. And essentially the main goal is to influence the UK built environment industry to integrate healthy ageing into their design thinking and business models as a result of this programme. We'll be working throughout with these different stakeholders, particularly local authorities, academic institutions, innovators and UK businesses, housing associations, investors and insurers, health and social care providers. And it's really important that we're really strong on the fact that, you know, we can learn lessons from people who've gone before, and we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We want to build on where there's a need for Connected Places Catapult to work. And we really want to work with others who are also working in this space so that we can work collaboratively. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we commissioned these 4 discovery projects in partnership with the academics and the industry experts, as I mentioned before, and some of the key principles that would define our programme have come out of this piece of research. Some of our principles include, when we talk about homes for healthy ageing, we're not just talking about homes, we're also including the places that the physical buildings sit within and the surrounding neighbourhoods and community of people. Ageing and older adults, we will work with people 55 years and old and over to address a variety of challenges facing the current older generation, but also the next one. When we talk about care, we talk about a holistic definition of care and providing what people need. There's a distinction between retrofit and new build here. Retrofit will be explored through the test beds across different tenures. But also the new build aspect of healthy ageing requirements will be considered through the wider programme. And then data governance and ethics will be carefully considering the testbed framework design, and we will hopefully be creating a playbook as we go along. And projects by have been helping us think about data governance and ethics around the data from these technologies. Next slide, please. Brilliant. So themes and challenges. So looking at when we were sort of designing this programme and working out for our test bed, which challenges shall we be focusing on. From our user research, we identified these sort of 4 broader buckets. So and we've illustrated it in 3D to really help bring that to life. So it's very much about not just the houses and the built environment, so the actual physical buildings and people moving homes, home adaptation and the outdoor environment. It's also about the people within those homes and their physical and mental health, including their diet and meals, physical activity and social isolation and loneliness. All these issues we've identified through speaking with partners as key ones we can look at exploring through this programme as they really impact how people can live independently in their homes for longer. Community and social environment is also very important. Community participation and support and the older adults' role within society. And then we've got care provision as that sort of layer around surrounding that social and health infrastructure, informal care, new models of care and professional care. So next slide, please. Brilliant. So this takes us to what are the objectives of the test bed within the wider programme. So we've spoken about we want to operate across the whole ecosystem. We want to help scale technologies. We want to work with the built environment industry. But initially, we need to set up these 5 test beds and living labs that will focus on those challenges that I just set out with location partners in order to start to test and demonstrate some technologies that seek to overcome some of those challenges in a bid to then also impact. We'll learn from those insights, we'll share those insights, and then hopefully the built environment industry will have the information they need to start to integrate them into their own design thinking and business models. So why is Connected Places Catapult using a test bed approach? The idea is to support local places and authorities to procure and develop impactful solutions with SMEs in a different way. We'll be helping SMEs to deploy useful and user-centered solutions and shape new use cases and will offer the opportunity to end users to share their feedback and co-develop solutions that truly answer their needs. Brilliant, thank you. I'm now going to hand over to Ryan, who's going to take you through the big opportunity and guidance. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalie, and thanks for everyone that's attending. So yeah, as what Natalie kind of alluded to, what I'm going to do now is just take you through, I guess, the opportunity and the guidance that we're looking to provide to SMEs around the opportunity that we're providing for funding and support and getting involved within the program, and more specifically our testbeds. But just I guess a bit of a forewarning, we did publish our open call brief, which went on our website last week. It can be found at the Connected Places Catapult website under the Homes for Healthy Aging webpage. So there's also that as a document as reference that we'll go through kind of today in terms of what the content is within that document, and also where you can find obviously more information. So if we can get to the next slide, please. So we've kind of talked a lot about the program and the objectives and stuff, and objectives more specifically of the testbeds. But I guess for those who might be kind of unfamiliar or might not necessarily have been involved in testbeds before, what specifically are these? So testbeds play a vital role in helping us assess the viability, impact, and potential to scale new innovations. Effectively, they can be facilitated in either controlled or uncontrolled environments. And specifically when it comes to, I guess, as a program, so how do we, as the Healthy Aging program within the Catapult, see them? We see it very much as kind of four characteristics. First one being a pre-procurement exercise. So working with location partners or partners within the testbed itself might actually see this as an opportunity to engage with new innovators or new solution providers as a means to assessing the viability of their solution or feasibility of their solution in addressing their challenge. And there could be, ongoing or post relationships built off the back of that. We see it as also an environment that determines a solution's success or failure, or whether there's actually kind of a need for adjusting solution or the development of a solution based on learnings, insights, and feedback that might be collected from engaging with participants in the testbed themselves, or working within effectively like an uncontrolled environment where you're able to understand the way in which a solution actually interacts within everyday kind of circumstances. We also see this being a process that supports a wide range of technical and non-technical solutions to develop and iterate their solutions. We see this very much as being more kind of challenge-led, in the focus being that we don't sort of pigeonhole ourselves in only looking at technology. We're kind of technology agnostic as one facet in that sense, but we also are kind of open and exploring the opportunities to support non-technical solutions that could be a provision of a new service or bringing in kind of efficiencies to a new service that might support and overcome the challenges that we're looking to address within the program itself. And I guess lastly, we see this very much as a non-competitive environment. And what we mean by non-competitive environment is the fact that we will run an open competitive call in order to establish, award, and select SMEs that we will take through to the testbed themselves. But ultimately, we'll try to support and award a wide range of technologies and non-tech solutions in a way that we can understand whether there are other ways in which the challenge can be addressed, or other elements of challenges can be addressed by these solutions, not necessarily funding very similar sort of solutions to compete against one another, in understanding which one could potentially serve as the best option to being a solution that is uptake or potentially used further down the line. If we can go to the next slide, please. Yeah. So then I guess that brings us on to a bit more of a kind of mindset, really, and the mindset that we want to see really within potentially the innovators that we select, or the ones that might be kind of in attendance today. So testbeds are a great opportunity to trial innovative and ambitious ideas in real life settings, to also be able to gather insights and feedback from user groups, citizens or participants within the testbed itself, with the main kind of goal and ambition really to refine and adjust those solutions to meet those kind of needs. We see testbeds being kind of a safe space in order to kind of learn and iterate really on the solution, and to be able to move towards developing a more meaningful user-centered solution, really based on obviously the interactions that you will undertake within the testbed and with the people that we see being impacted by the challenge that they might face every single day. And we kind of see a couple of elements really of what we want people to kind of bring really to the fold, and to really kind of think about when they're proposing or applying to be a part of this testbed. One, to be kind of ambitious, so to test bold ideas and to think about taking risks potentially in kind of controlling or in safe environment that we're going to be establishing. We really want people to approach that with kind of like an open mind, to be able to account for any kind of external variables that might be unforeseen, or potentially to interact or engage with new people to collect new insights to be able to define your solution in new ways that you might not necessarily considered. And I guess to kind of underpin all that, really, it's more the kind of flexibility and understanding that there are ways in which you might not necessarily have tested your solution before, and there are new kind of elements that you might want to implement in terms of the development of your solution, to be able to pivot, move and react quickly to kind of market or to people's needs more specifically. So really that kind of flexibility, I think, kind of underpins what we want people to kind of approach this, approach the potential involvement of their testbed being. If we can move on to the next slide, please. So then I guess coming on to what is the actual opportunity. So what are we kind of here today to talk to the SMEs about? So the Catapult, the Connected Places Catapult more specifically, are looking to provide funding and expertise to find and test innovative solutions to local challenges around healthy aging. The idea is to kind of create the environment to demonstrate the impact of these solutions in order to kind of build the need and case for scaling those solutions beyond the program and obviously to market as well. And how we intend of doing that is actually collaborating with not necessarily just two partners or two locations in that sense, as Natalie alluded to earlier. We are looking to run or establish 5 test beds around the UK. Because this is a multi-year program, we're actually only delivering 2 test beds in 2021. Those 2 will be centered around Northern Ireland and Sunderland. There's 2 specific locations. Within the Northern Ireland location, the kind of theme of the challenge that we're trying to explore and that we'll be providing more kind of information about further in the month of September will be around kind of their challenge theme of social isolation and loneliness. So how can solution providers potentially address the challenge that is being impacted on everyday individuals within Northern Ireland in relation to being socially isolated or actually experiencing challenges with loneliness or issues with mental health around loneliness problems. And as part of that location, I guess, the opportunity within Northern Ireland specifically is for SMEs or innovators to be able to work with a very wide range and breadth of partners and expertise. So within that, we have Ulster University, the Connected Health and Innovation Centre, Queen's University Belfast, Age Northern Ireland, Belfast City Council, the Public Health Agency Northern Ireland, the Health Innovation Research Alliance, and the Market Development Association. These are all partners that are effectively involved in the delivery of this testbed and will offer you any successful innovators the opportunity to engage with, work directly with, and potentially to learn and support throughout the kind of testing phase as well. And then obviously kind of leaning more on towards the other testbed location we have is Sunderland City Council. They are specifically looking at challenges around cold and damp homes within the kind of northeast. And within the kind of context of their challenge, again, we're looking for solutions that can support addressing the challenge and breaking this kind of cycle, really, in terms of people of an older demographic who actually experience respiratory issues and actually going to hospital, but potentially breaking the cycle of then coming out and actually entering the home that is actually the causality of them experiencing the respiratory issues in the first place. As I mentioned, there's more kind of information within the open call brief that we published last week. However, the thing that I'll mention and I'll pick up later on in the webinar is the fact that we will be running a second event on the 15th of September. This will be specifically hosted and delivered by our 2 location partners, and they'll go into a lot more details around what the challenge actually is, their expectations, the way in which they see the SMEs operating within the region, how they might potentially deploy their solutions, and ultimately, in terms of testers or participants, who might you be engaging with to actually collect, refine, and deploy your solutions. So there'll be more to come on that further down the line. If we can go to the next slide, please, Liam. Thank you. So thinking more specifically in terms of, I guess, the actual offer to SMEs. So the Connected Places Catapult is investing £400,000 to trial and test innovative solutions across the 5 locations. As I mentioned, we're only launching the 2 test beds this autumn, and we'll be delivering a further 3 in next year. We'll be launching an open call once we kind of define who those location partners will be within Q1. The open call will be more around so kind of Q2, Q3 sort of time. But the idea around that, again, is to provide similar sort of opportunities to SME. But because we'll be working with 3 locations this time, we'll be providing more opportunities to SMEs, or a more wider range of opportunities for SMEs next year. Within the kind of 2 locations that we're supporting this year, each location will receive up to 80k worth of SME funding. We will look to support a minimum of kind of 8 SMEs, and how those kind of SMEs will be structured is across kind of 2 tiers. So we expect to see a minimum of 2 SMEs funded for what we're kind of defining as tier 1, and a minimum of 6 SMEs to be supported for tier 2. Within the kind of tiers themselves, funding will be split, largely because we see tier 1 being more centered around the actual development of solutions. So how can SMEs actually come into the program, into the testbed themselves, and actually look to benefit from co-creation opportunities by working with participants, with testers, or citizens, in order to actually kind of learn from the insights, collect and gather feedback that can help them to refine their solution, to actually develop a user-centered solution around the needs of the individuals that they might be speaking with. We see this kind of opportunity being a lot longer in terms of the actual deployment length. So it's likely to be at least kind of 1 to 2 months kind of engagement piece, where you actually be deploying your solution within the kind of environment itself, engaging with people, accessing kind of feedback, training, and wider support, not only necessarily from the Catapult, but also from the location partners, in order to kind of create and deploy and really kind of realize some kind of impact on the challenge that we're trying to address. I guess I will just make a note that the funding split will provide greater clarity on that in recent weeks. We'll be looking to release more information around the open call as we kind of go out through the month of September, which I've kind of mentioned. But again, I'm sure that's probably a question that will get asked later, but feel free to, I can clarify that again further down the line. And then from a tier 2 perspective, we see this very much more centered around actually demonstrating or showcasing the impact of a solution. So it's likely we might work with more mature solutions within this kind of instance, who are just looking for a valid use case in order to understand the level of impact they might actually have, or the viability of their solution within a kind of given use case within the testbed itself. This is more likely to be quite a short, sharp opportunity to deploy your solution for maybe up to 2 to 4 weeks, maybe potentially longer. But the idea around this is obviously to kind of learn from the insights that the testbed is providing you, to demonstrate and validate the solution more generally, and to potentially scale beyond the testbed itself. If we can go to the next slide, please, Anne. So then what kind of eligibility are we looking for in terms of the SMEs that should apply or that can apply? As I kind of alluded to earlier, we're not necessarily just looking for technological solutions. We're also looking for potentially non-tech solutions, providing they are aligned and intended to address the challenge that we have set. It's not actually a requirement of your solution to be commercially viable. Again, the element and the focus really is more on addressing the challenge to create a positive social change on the local problem and on the local people that experience that challenge on a daily basis. So in order to, I guess, to qualify to receive the funding more specifically, so what are the Catapult's requirements in order for SMEs to receive funding? So you must be an SME, by that definition, a company that has fewer than 250 employees. You must be and have a registered UK company. You must have an innovative idea or solution that you're willing to either develop or test in a real world environment. Again, that will obviously be related to the types of tiers that we're offering, and whether you are applicable to tier 1 in terms of the development, actually learning from the solution, learning from the testbed to refine your solution, or whether you're actually looking to test the level of impact or level of viability your solution might actually have on the use case itself. And then lastly, you must be able to address the challenge statements with your solution as what we've mentioned. We are not necessarily just looking for, I guess, solutions as well within the healthcare domain or within the healthcare industry. We're also happy to accept and willing to consider solutions that might be in parallel domains or parallel industries that might actually be looking to address a new challenge because they see an opportunity or they see a gap within the market. So again, we're not necessarily, we're quite open-minded really in terms of the types of opportunities or types of solutions we might see coming through this as a channel. If we go to the next slide, please. So how to apply. All of you on the call today might be more familiar with F-Success as a startup platform. The intention is for the Catapult to run all kind of applications through this platform. What we will be intending to do is publish the list of questions next week. This will be more in a PDF or Word format that will go on our webpage. Excuse me. This is just to give you a bit of a foresight really of the types of questions that we're going to be asking and how you might actually be able to address or propose what your approach might be to addressing the challenge more specifically, so that when it comes to actually the applications opening on the 20th of September, you're kind of ready and waiting to be able to submit a proposal within the kind of time frame that we've kind of set. So as I mentioned, applications will open on the 20th of September. We'll run these for around a 3-week period, just so that we are able to provide and publicly share all the information in the lead up to that call, just so that everyone has everything they need to in order to make a valid proposal in order to submit and actually apply to the call itself. The application itself will actually be live on the 20th as well, so links will be provided and shared to registered attendees and to the wider ecosystem, shared via kind of newsletters, through social media and stuff. So there'll be plenty of kind of updates and visibility around how you can actually apply further down the line. If you do have any questions, obviously in the meantime, or any questions about F-Success more generally, when applications are actually open, then what we do and what we're requesting is for all questions to come through the Homes for Healthy Aging at CPC Catapult org email address. So please direct all your queries through that later down the line. And just, I guess, a bit of a disclaimer really, obviously where we're running 2 tiers in terms of the types of solutions that we might be supporting, we will consider the applications and the applicants who have submitted for each of the tier to potentially be demoted or promoted to either one. So we may see that you have a greater fit or that you might be more suitable to either one of the other tiers. Obviously, this will be a decision and a conversation that we have with each SME, but this will be based on the decision of the applications that come through and probably take place in later on, once we actually go through the kind of assessment and interview stage of selecting the SMEs themselves. But again, that's more just a kind of disclaimer to make you aware of that. If we can go to the next slide, please. So then actually, how do we go through the kind of selecting the SMEs more generally? What's our kind of process? So we're running a 2-stage selection process to award the SMEs as part of the first 2 test beds. The selection process will take place after the applications close, which will take place between the 11th and the 24th of October. Stage 1 will be an application review. So a team of panelists within the Connected Places Catapult will review all applications that are submitted through the F-Success platform. We'll then sift through and ensure that the number of SMEs that we see being relevant or being eligible to receive an interview will be notified for the following week. So we will run interviews the week commencing the 18th. This is kind of just to set out that although there is quite a short turnaround in terms of when the decisions will be made, in terms of when the interviews will actually be facilitated, it's more to make you aware that we'll need some level of reactiveness from SMEs as and when they potentially receive an interview to be able to be available for that week commencing. And then in terms of the actual selection and selecting the finalists or the awardees, we'll look to notify all kind of outcomes of those interviews by the 25th of October. If we can move to the next slide, please. So how will you be evaluated? Again, I've kind of mentioned that we published the open call last week. There's more kind of detailed breakdown in terms of the specifics, in terms of the requirements and the types of questions that will be, or the types of considerations we'll be evaluating you on. However, what we've kind of broken this down to is in kind of more 3 themes, really. So I guess more specifically looking at the level of understanding around the challenge or the theme that you're trying to address, what your kind of approach is and your plan for developing or testing your solution with the end users. So we really want to see the level of kind of quality and approach really in terms of what you're trying to propose and how you're trying to address the challenge more specifically. Secondly, how your solution will kind of demonstrate impact, and in what ways your solution is your solution different to existing healthy aging interventions. The reason being for this is that we're not necessarily just looking for solutions that might have been tested or trialed in previous circumstances or to address previous challenges. It's more to look at how can we actually learn and develop from the insights that we're collecting from the testbed itself in order to kind of demonstrate impact. Solutions that obviously are already pre-existing are more likely to kind of just come through the kind of demonstration or showcasing stage in order to actually understand what types of impact or potential impact you might actually have on the challenge itself. And then lastly, and thirdly, really, is the types of skills and expertise really within your team. Obviously, where we're working within a testbed that's centered around healthy aging and potentially engaging with UK citizens or people who are vulnerable in that sense, we really need to understand that you have the right skills and capabilities in understanding and compliance to UK regulations, specifically around GDPR. We need to ensure that you have your approach is mapped out and planned out to consider all kind of walks of life and governance around how you'll manage data responsibly and how you'll ensure that privacy is maintained in the individuals, and that the way in which your solution is refined or iterated based on the insights and data that's collected is done in a privacy way. So that's more some things to kind of take into account. And again, as I mentioned, there are more details within the open call brief that is available on our website. So if we can go to the next slide, please. I guess looking at the timeline, so more of a holistic picture, really. So as I mentioned, we published the open call brief last week on the 27th. We are running and facilitating the first program webinar today, and we have the second one on the 15th. The second one on the 15th, as I mentioned, will be more facilitated by the Connected Places Catapult, but delivered by our location partners, who will give you the kind of more details on the actual challenge itself and what the kind of expectations are around the types of solutions or the ways in which the SMEs will actually work with the location partners in addressing the challenge. Within the kind of gap between both webinars, we'll actually be publishing the application questions. This is just, again, to give you a bit of foresight and a bit of understanding of the types of questions we will be asking of you, so that you can prepare and plan your kind of proposal for when the applications actually open, which will take place on the 20th. They will run for 3 weeks until the 10th of October. Applications will then be reviewed, as I've kind of mentioned, between the 11th and 24th. We'll select and award the SMEs on the 25th. We'll then enter into the contract negotiations for November. And in parallel, what we'll look to do is start the kind of SME onboarding, planning the experimentation. So what's the actual kind of approach in terms of the constraints of the environment? Who are the types of testers you might be working with specifically? How are you going to be engaging with the location partners more specifically? And really kind of establishing the foundations for what you're going to be testing throughout the kind of testing phase, whether that's actually going to be showcasing your solution and demoing it, or more whether it's actually going to be testing and trialing your solution to actually learn and develop your solution further from the insights that you might be collecting from the testbed itself. Again, just to note that obviously this is the timeline for the testbeds this year. We will be running another open call next year around sort of Q2, Q3 time. More details of that, though, will come later on in this year or earlier next year. And I guess just to note that if SMEs are unsuccessful in this time around, nothing kind of excludes you from reapplying for a testbed or potentially to take part in the testbed next year. So we welcome kind of a wider array of solutions or potentially opportunities to understand how people will approach challenges in different ways. So if we can move to the next slide, please. So this is just I guess the final slide really in terms of the next steps. So what I kind of advise and suggest is that if obviously based on the content that you've seen today and you're interested in potentially applying, then you sign up for the webinar that will be taking place on the 15th. This will be again delivered by the location partners and really dive into what the kind of opportunity will be around the challenges themselves, the types of the environment that you'll potentially be engaging with, so that again you can really learn from and really kind of design your approach in a planned and cohesive way, so that you can submit that and propose it through the kind of application form and the application process, so that you can be within chance for receiving funding and taking part in our testbed. So we'll move on to the next slide, which is just, I'll open up the floor, I guess, to questions, but I just want to take the opportunity to thank everyone for attending today. We're looking forward to seeing the types of SMEs and types of solutions they're actually going to be proposing to taking part in the testbed from the 20th onwards. But I welcome any kind of questions here today if anyone has anything more specifically around what they've heard today, or if they want to know anything more specifically around the program itself.
Thanks, Ryan. So we've got quite a few questions that have come in, which is brilliant. And we've been answering a few in the chat and in the Q&A as well, if you want to check those tabs. So a question here from Alexandra Love: can SMEs apply in collaboration with partners such as universities?
Yes, we don't exclude that SMEs can't apply with partners. If anything, if you feel that this adds more validity to your approach and they can actually support you in deploying, testing, or developing your solution, then yes, we welcome that. It's not a specific criteria though. Anyone who applies as a standalone SME will not be in any less of a disadvantage, really, as opposed to anyone who actually applies with that partnership. However, what we will be doing is obviously only awarding directly the SME with the funding themselves. So if that partnership is either in kind or funded, then that's something that you'll have to agree to separately outside of the program with the intended partner in question.
Brilliant, thank you, Ryan. And that leads me to another question, not quite asked here, but that we've had recently around, can universities apply by themselves? It does need to go to SMEs. So I think following, as Ryan just said, as a collaboration would be best in that respect. But if there are universities on the call who would really like to explore that further with us, please do get in touch, because there are other ways that universities and researchers can support the programme. So we'd love to hear from you as well. Brilliant. So Deirdre, a question from Deirdre here: can SMEs make more than one application? Also, can they apply for both Tier 1 and Tier 2? And if they have ideas that align with both tiers? Great question.
That is a good question. So I'll take the latter one first. So yes, I think SMEs can apply for both tiers. However, both approaches will probably need to be very different in relation to the expectations and the outcomes of what Tier 1 and Tier 2 are focused on. So if your solution is very much an early stage solution, you're looking to develop this and refine it further with citizens or with user feedback, then great. If it's a more mature solution that you're looking to test and demonstrate, then that is something we'll also entertain. But again, the decision that we will take will be based on what we think you may be more suited to in terms of the tiers that you are applying to. We would anticipate that the proposals would be very different as well, and we'd expect to see that. Again, with the focus and the length of time being very different, we would expect your approach to reflect that.
Brilliant, thank you, Ryan. Another question here from Alex Cousins: does the SME have to work in those locations, or can they test in other locations if it fits the challenges of damp, cold homes or social isolation? So
no, the SMEs have to be deploying the solutions within the locations that we have specified. These are the environments that we are setting up as the testbed themselves. However, I guess just to add to that, because of COVID and recent kind of impacts that we've seen, deployment can be quite difficult, especially for an SME who might be looking to apply from mainland UK into the Northern Ireland Challenge. But what we're looking to do is we're establishing the partnership with the location partners who will actually be on hand to help you facilitate and deploy your solution within that given environment yourselves. So it's very much likely that although you might want to explore other areas of the UK, for this program, it's solely on the regions that we focused on. However, it doesn't exclude you from applying kind of for both, really, if you're based in mainland UK or Northern Ireland, really, in that respect, because there will be opportunities to potentially get your solution actually within the environment itself or deployed within that kind of region more specifically.
Brilliant. Thank you. A question here from Simon: can local authorities top up any funding that may be awarded to an SME in order for the solution to be thoroughly tested, especially if the fund sum is relatively low?
So there won't be any monetary funds available, but there will be a lot of in-kind support. The Catapult, the Connected Places Catapult, are funding some of the partnerships to be able to provide in-kind support or infrastructure or additional expertise that will go as value-added activities to each of SME. Any kind of monetary support or funding that comes from the local authority or potentially one of the partners will be post-program and outside the boundaries of which the program operates. That will just be an existing a relationship that you might develop, or a mutual purchase of a mutual procurement process, really, that you'll go through with those organisations.
Brilliant, thank you. Next question, is there a different application or set of questions for each tier?
Yes, there will be, which is why we're publishing the application questions ahead of time. If it wasn't necessarily that clear, the tier 1, which is the development phase, will obviously be a larger funding pot size, as in there'll be a larger amount of money associated with that first tier. We expect this to be a more thorough set of questions and a more thorough approach and plan that is required from the SMEs to be applied, versus tier 2, which is more centered around a lesser in terms of time frame deployment, and actually the focus will be more assessing obviously the validity and feasibility of your solution in addressing the impact. So it's very much likely that the application questions will be more centered around what this looks like and what your approach is going to be, but will be less on the time and requirements of the SME to actually apply to it.
Super, thank you. And another question here, for co-creation, do we need to have formed these local relationships in advance of the application, e.g. with the local NHS?
No. However, if you have formed some of these local connections, then that will only solidify or strengthen your proposal potentially. What we are doing is working with the location partners who will be on hand to deliver and be effectively the facilitator and connector with the local partners and local testers or participants that will be able to support you through the actual environment itself. Whatever you can do to kind of add value, I think, to that approach or to that region or to that kind of testing phase is ultimately down to what you set out within your proposal.
Brilliant. And then we have another question in the chat bar from Emma. She says, you may answer this in the presentation later, but have you included the longer term assessment of the outcomes as well as the 1 to 2 month period? Our service operates on the basis of quick wins, greater independence at home, and reducing long-term risks of premature aging, i.e. reducing incidents of avoidable accident or illness over several years. How do you plan to gather, assess the outcomes? That's a really important question. Thanks, Emma. That's one of the whole team have really been exploring a lot throughout us designing the programme. We will be creating impact assessments for each of the test beds, and then looking, so it's a 2-year programme. So initially it's a 5 test beds, but then we'll be looking at what insights have come out of those test beds, and what's the relevance, how can we sort of ensure that the impacts continue beyond the lifetime of the programme. So looking at building like a wider impact assessment for the programme as well, and working with partners on that sustainability piece. Ryan, do you have any more specific answers to how we gather and assess the outcomes?
Nothing in terms, I think, of how we gather and assess it, but I think something to be mentioned is the kind of visibility and exposure that we'll look to create around the solution providers and the SMEs that might be awarded themselves. So as part of the kind of impact assessments, we'll look to do some showcase events or look to create some case studies around the types of impact that we've actually seen from your interventions in situ. So this is all intended to, again, support the long-term sustainability and long-term viability of you as a solution provider or you as a business, and again to help potentially support you to attain further funding, further follow-on funding beyond the programme itself.
Brilliant, thank you. And a questions just come through, really, really important question. Are you open to large organisations partnering and providing in-kind support to any of the participants? I think our answer would be yes, definitely. We're interested in hearing from any large organisation who may want to provide in-kind support or to sponsor part of the programme or a specific test bed. If you'd like to get in touch, we'd love to hear from you, or if you have ideas of which large organisations may be interested. We are not limited as well to the 5 test beds. We've developed this approach that can be scaled as well if others would like to sponsor additional test beds. So we'd love to hear from you. Thank you. I think we've got another couple of questions. We had a question in the chat bar as well earlier that I answered, but it was from the London Borough of Hillingdon saying about if they would, they were keen to apply as a local authority potentially as a good fit for another test bed. I've put a link in the chat bar to our expression of interest form. So that's for local authorities or potential location partner consortiums. That might be a local authority, housing association, charity, academic, university or research organisation. Please do fill in that form on the chat bar if you're interested in becoming one of the 3 test beds that will launch in 2022. So that's in there as well. I don't think we've got any more questions that have come through. We'll just leave for 1 more minute in case any do pop up. We're really, really grateful for you joining us today. It's brilliant to engage with you on here, and please do get in touch on our email there, homes2healthyaging@cp.catapult.org.uk. We have another event lined up for the 16th of September, so please do sign up. You'll hear from our location partners more around the challenges on that event. So I think that'd be really brilliant if you could join us there for more information, and then the application process will be open. I haven't seen any more questions, so I think we will thank you again and wrap it up there for today.
One final thing for us. So thank you all for registering today. And what we'll do is we'll send around. I've mentioned the open call brief that we've talked about today. Natalie mentioned the expression of interest form as well, and the link to the up and coming webinar. What we'll do is we'll send a follow-up